He thought he was alone on the terrace. The princess heard his impossible confession. Lauren stepped out onto the palace terrace, his boots tapping lightly against the cold stone. The night air was cool against his face, a welcome relief from the heat of the day. The distant hum of the city below seemed far away up here, and for a moment Lauren felt at peace. It had been a long, exhausting day, one of many in the past few weeks. The tension between his people and the ruling elite had never been higher, and Lauren was tired. Tired of fighting, tired of the endless demands placed upon him, tired of pretending that everything was fine. He found a quiet corner of the terrace and leaned against the railing, looking out over the sprawling palace gardens. The moonlight bathed everything in a soft glow, casting long shadows over the ornate statues and flower beds. The scent of jasmine lingered in the air, carried by the gentle breeze. Lauren closed his eyes for a moment, breathing it in, trying to forget the weight of the world for just a little while. His thoughts drifted, and before he knew it, the words were slipping from his mouth. "I never thought I'd be here," he muttered to himself, not expecting anyone to hear. "Standing on a terrace beneath the stars, confessing my heart to someone I can never have." He let out a bitter laugh, though it sounded more like a sigh. His hands gripped the railing a little tighter. He had to speak, if only to release the knot that had been building in his chest for so long. The feeling that had been buried deep inside him for months, maybe even years, finally bubbled to the surface. "Princess Lyra," he whispered softly, the name feeling strange on his lips. "You've always been so far out of reach, a world away from me, but every time I see you it's like my heart just stops. You're everything I never thought I'd deserve." Lauren's voice trembled as he spoke, and the night seemed to listen in silence. His confession was not something he had ever planned to make aloud. It wasn't something that could ever be shared, not in his position, not with someone of her status. He was a soldier, nothing more, nothing less. He had no place in the life of someone like Princess Lyra. She was royalty, heir to a throne, bound by duty and the expectations of the people she would one day rule. His life, on the other hand, was that of an outcast, a fighter. A tool to be used in battle, then discarded when no longer needed. But even with those truths hanging over him, Lauren couldn't stop himself. The words poured out of him, as if the very act of speaking them would bring some relief. "You've been promised to another. A man of power, a man with wealth, with lands. A man who would never understand what I see in you. You're more than just a princess, Lyra. You're a fire, a flame burning so brightly that I can't look away. Your strength, your grace. You make me believe that maybe, just maybe, there's something more to this world than endless fighting." He took a deep breath, trying to steady his heart, trying to quell the storm of emotions inside him. His mind was a whirlwind, his thoughts scattered, and he fought to keep his voice from shaking. "I don't even know if you'd ever notice me," he continued, his voice growing quieter. "But I would fight for you, Lyra. I would fight until my last breath. I would stand against anyone, anything, for a chance. Just a chance to be near you, to stand by your side even if I can never be with you." Lauren fell silent, the weight of his own words pressing down on him. What was he doing? What had possessed him to speak such things aloud? He wasn't a poet, he wasn't a man of grand speeches. He was just Lauren, a soldier with a heart too big for his own good. And now he had confessed his impossible love to a woman who would never know what it was like to be in his shoes. But even as the realization of his actions hit him, a strange sense of calm settled over him. It was out now. His heart, the one thing he had kept locked away, was finally free. But just as Lauren was about to turn away from the railing, ready to leave the terrace and slip back into the shadows of his life, he heard a soft voice. "Lauren!" He froze. His heart skipped a beat. That voice, he knew it anywhere. Princess Lyra. His body went rigid as he turned, his breath catching in his throat. There, standing just a few feet away from him, was Lyra. Her dark hair was loose, flowing around her shoulders, and the soft glow of the moon seemed to highlight her features. She wore a simple gown, nothing extravagant, but even so she looked like something out of a dream. Her presence, like the weight of the entire palace, filled the space between them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Lauren's mind raced. What was she doing here? How long had she been standing there, listening to his confession? His stomach churned with a mix of fear and anticipation. Lyra's gaze was steady, her eyes locked on his. There was no judgment there, no scorn, just quiet understanding. "You heard me," Lauren said, the words coming out before he could stop them. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Lyra nodded slightly, her lips curving into a faint smile, but it wasn't a mocking smile. It was something else, something he couldn't quite place. "I heard you," she said softly, taking a step closer. "And I know what it feels like to be trapped by duty, to long for something, or someone, you can never have." Lauren's heart pounded in his chest. He couldn't believe it. Was she saying she understood? Was she saying she felt the same way? "I'm not like them," Lyra continued, her voice steady, but her eyes betrayed a deep sadness. "I'm not like the nobles who surround me, the ones who would sacrifice everything for power. I have my own dreams, my own desires, but I am bound by my birth, by my role. And sometimes it feels like there's no way out." Lauren opened his mouth to speak, but Lyra held up a hand, silencing him. "But that doesn't mean I don't understand," she said, her eyes meeting his with a quiet intensity. "What you said, it matters to me. It matters more than you know." Lauren swallowed hard, feeling a rush of emotions, hope, fear, confusion, all crashing over him at once. He took a hesitant step toward her, his heart racing. Before he could finish, Lyra stepped closer still, her presence overwhelming. Her eyes never left his as she spoke in a quiet, almost wistful tone. Maybe we can rewrite our own stories, Lauren. Maybe we can change the course of our fates." Her words hung in the air between them, full of promise and possibility, but also fraught with danger. A love like theirs was impossible, a dream too far out of reach. But in that moment, Lauren felt a flicker of hope, and just as quickly, the moment passed. Lyra took a step back, her face unreadable, though there was a slight tremble in her hand as she withdrew it from his. "I have to go," she said softly, her voice betraying a hint of sorrow. "But thank you, Lauren, for sharing your heart with me." And with that, she turned, walking away into the shadows of the palace, leaving Lauren standing alone on the terrace, the night air colder than before. The next few days felt like a blur to Lauren. Every step he took seemed to echo in his mind, each sound a reminder of the words he had spoken on the terrace. He had never been one for grand gestures, never had the courage to express himself so openly, especially not to someone like Princess Lyra. But there it was, laid bare, and all he could do was try to pretend that nothing had changed. But it had. Every time Lauren passed a group of palace servants or a member of the royal guard, he caught whispers behind his back. Some spoke in hushed tones, as though they were afraid he might overhear. Others looked at him with pity, a look Lauren hated more than anything else. He could feel the weight of the royal palace pressing down on him. He was an outsider, a soldier with no place among these people. He had no right to dream of a future with Lyra, no right to even think about her that way. And yet the thought lingered. His nights were filled with restlessness. The image of Lyra standing on the terrace, hearing his confession, haunted him. The way her gaze had softened, the way she had said those words, "Maybe we can rewrite our own stories." He couldn't shake them. They clung to him like a dream he wasn't ready to wake from. Lauren found himself walking toward the terrace again, as if his feet had a mind of their own. It was evening, and the sky was painted with streaks of orange and purple. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the gardens below. He could almost hear the soft rustling of the trees in the distance. It felt peaceful up here, away from the noise of the palace, the politics, the expectations. As he stepped onto the terrace, Lauren's heart skipped a beat. There she was, standing by the railing, her back to him. Princess Lyra, her dark hair falling in loose waves around her shoulders, wearing the simple gown she had worn that night. It was as though the world had come to a halt. The space between them seemed to shrink, and for a moment, Lauren could hardly breathe. Lyra didn't turn around immediately. She just stood there, gazing out over the gardens as though she was lost in her own thoughts. Lauren took a cautious step forward, unsure of what to say or how to act. He had always known his place. He was a soldier, a warrior, nothing more. But now, in this moment, it felt like the lines between them were blurring. "Princess," he said, his voice almost a whisper. Lyra turned slowly, and when their eyes met, Lauren felt a rush of warmth flood his chest. She was not the same as the other women he had known. There was a depth to her, something that went beyond her royal status, something that made her seem real. "Lauren," she said, her voice soft but not cold, "you've been avoiding me." He felt a flush rise to his cheeks, though he quickly pushed it down. I didn't want to cause any trouble," he said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "You're a princess, and I'm just a soldier. I shouldn't have." "Shouldn't have what?" Lyra interrupted, stepping closer. "Spoken the truth. Don't you think I've been avoiding you too? Afraid that I might say something I should, afraid that I might let my heart speak when it should." Lauren stared at her, the words hanging in the air. Was it possible? Had she been feeling the same things? He didn't dare hope for it, but her eyes, those dark, knowing eyes, told him that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance. "Princess, Lauren began, but Lyra raised a hand to stop him. "Call me Lyra," she said softly. "When we're alone, I'm not just a princess, I'm a person." Lauren nodded, a lump forming in his throat. He had never imagined he would stand here on this terrace with Lyra speaking so openly. It felt surreal. "Lyra," he said quietly, "I've always admired you more than you could ever know. I've seen the way you carry yourself, the way you speak with such wisdom. But I never thought someone like me would be able to stand in front of you, let alone speak my heart." Lyra smiled faintly, the corners of her lips lifting in a way that made Lauren's heart race. "Lauren, you've always been more than just a soldier. You've shown strength and courage, and it's those things that matter more than titles or status. You've made me see things differently." Lauren took a step closer, his heart pounding in his chest. The distance between them seemed to shrink with every passing second, and though he knew they couldn't cross certain lines, he couldn't help but feel the pull between them. "But we can't," he said, shaking his head. "Your family would never accept me. I'm not of noble blood. I'm not someone who belongs in your world." Lyra's gaze softened, and she stepped even closer, her hand brushing his arm. "I never asked for a life of luxury or titles. I asked for freedom, Lauren, freedom to choose my path, but the weight of duty is heavy. I can't simply throw it away, I have to think of my people." Lauren looked down at their hands, inches apart, and he felt something inside him stir, a mixture of hope and fear. He had always known the reality of their situation. Lyra was royalty, he was a soldier. Their worlds were never meant to collide. But now, standing here with her, everything seemed uncertain. What if they could rewrite their story? What if there was a way? "I don't know what to do," Lauren admitted, his voice quiet. Lyra smiled softly, a knowing look in her eyes. "Neither do I, but sometimes, Lauren, we have to take a risk. We have to trust that there's more to life than the roles we've been assigned." Lauren felt a sense of wonder rise within him. Her words, her presence, everything about her made him believe that maybe, just maybe, there was more to this life than he had ever imagined. "I don't know what will happen," Lauren said, his voice steady now. "But I will fight for you, Lyra. I will stand by your side no matter what." Lyra nodded, her eyes shining. "And I'll stand by yours." They stood there for a moment, their eyes locked in a silent understanding. Neither of them knew what the future held, but in that moment they both knew one thing for sure. They were no longer alone. They had each other, and that was enough for now. The wind picked up again, rustling the leaves in the garden below, and for the first time in a long while, Lauren felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to be together. The days following Lauren and Lyra's conversation on the terrace passed in a blur of uncertainty. Lauren couldn't shake the feeling that everything had shifted, yet nothing had truly changed. They still lived in separate worlds, each bound by invisible chains they could not escape. Despite the fleeting moments of hope that had flickered between them, Lauren knew better than to believe that their love could truly blossom without consequence. He continued his work as a soldier, training, guarding, and following orders, but his mind was always somewhere else, on Lyra, on the future they had briefly imagined. But it was a future that seemed impossible. How could a princess, someone so important to the world, be with someone like him? How could he ask her to choose him, knowing the burden it would place on her? But no matter how much Lauren tried to bury his feelings, they only grew stronger. Each time he saw Lyra in the palace corridors, each time their eyes met for just a brief moment, the weight of his desire pressed down on him, unbearable and constant. He couldn't escape it. He couldn't escape her. It was late one night when Lauren found himself once again on the palace terrace. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale light over the gardens below. The air was cool, the same breeze that had whispered across the stone before. Lauren leaned against the railing, staring out at the horizon. He wasn't sure what he was hoping for, maybe just some clarity or maybe just a moment of peace. A soft sound interrupted his thoughts, a gentle footstep behind him. Lauren turned quickly, his heart racing. There she was again, standing in the same spot where they had spoken just days ago. Lyra's presence filled the space between them, and Lauren felt a rush of warmth in his chest. "Lyra," he said quietly, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. "What are you doing here?" She smiled softly, the kind of smile that seemed to speak volumes without saying a word. "I should be asking you that," she replied, her voice light but with a hint of something deeper underneath. "I thought I might find you here." Lauren felt his heart skip a beat. She had come to find him. After everything they had discussed, after the impossible truth he had confessed to her, she had sought him out. It was something he never could have imagined. Lauren began, but Lyra held up a hand, silencing him. "I know what you're thinking," she said, her gaze steady. "That we're both trapped in roles that keep us apart, that nothing can ever be different." Lauren looked at her, unsure how to respond. It was as if she had read his mind. "I don't know how to change that," he said softly. "I don't know what to do. You're a princess. You're bound by duty, and I'm nothing compared to the men you're supposed to marry." Lyra stepped closer, her expression gentle but firm. "Lauren, you don't understand," she said. "You think that because I'm a princess, I have everything I need, but I don't. I'm trapped in a cage of expectations. I'm not free to choose what I want, who I want." She took a deep breath, her voice lowering. "And I don't want to be trapped anymore." Lauren's heart clenched at the sincerity in her words. He had always admired her strength, but hearing her say it out loud, that she too felt trapped, made everything more real. She was more than just a princess. She was a woman, a person with hopes, dreams, and fears just like him. "I never wanted this life for you," Lauren said quietly. "I never wanted to be the reason you had to fight against your family, against your destiny." Lyra shook her head. "It's not just about you, Lauren. It's about me too, about what I want. I want to be free to make my own choices, and right now my choice is you." Lauren felt his breath catch in his throat. He could hardly believe what she was saying. She wanted him. She had chosen him despite everything. Despite the consequences, despite the world that would try to tear them apart. "I don't know how to make this work," Lauren admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "But I know I don't want to lose you." Lyra's eyes softened, and she reached out, her hand brushing his. It was a simple gesture, but it felt like everything. The touch of her skin against his scent, a wave of warmth through him, as if everything was finally falling into place. "We don't have to have all the answers right now," Lyra said. "We don't have to figure everything out tonight, but we have to start somewhere. We have to stop pretending that we don't feel this. Stop pretending that we don't want more than just this." Lauren looked at her, the weight of her words sinking in. She was right. They didn't have to have everything figured out. All they had to do was take the first step, and that was enough for him. "I'll fight for you," Lauren said, his voice steady with resolve. "I'll fight for us no matter what." Lyra smiled, and for the first time in days, Lauren felt like he could breathe again. There was hope, a real hope, that maybe they could make it work. Maybe they could find a way to be together despite the world that would try to tear them apart. "I don't want you to fight alone," Lyra said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're in this together, Lauren. I won't let you fight alone." They stood there in the quiet of the night, their hands still touching. The world around them seemed to fall away, leaving only the two of them, standing together on the terrace, facing the future with a sense of determination that neither of them had felt before. But even as they shared this moment, Lauren knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. They were not just fighting for love, they were fighting for a future that seemed impossible. There were forces at play that neither of them could control, and Lauren feared the consequences of what they were about to undertake. But at that moment, none of it seemed to matter. All that mattered was Lyra and the choice they had both made. "I don't know what will happen," Lauren said quietly, his voice full of uncertainty. "But I promise you this, I will stand by your side, always." Lyra's smile deepened, and she stepped even closer, her face just inches from his. "And I will stand by yours," she said, her breath warm against his skin. "We'll face whatever comes together, that's all I know for sure." Lauren nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle into his heart. Together. For the first time, he truly believed that maybe, just maybe, they could face whatever came next, no matter how impossible it seemed. The breeze picked up again, rustling the leaves of the nearby trees. Lauren and Lyra stood there for a long moment, their hands entwined, staring out at the horizon. The future was uncertain, but they would face it together, side by side. And for the first time in a long time, Lauren allowed himself to hope. The weeks that followed were filled with tension and secrecy. Lauren and Lyra found themselves caught in a delicate dance, where every decision felt like it could tip the balance between hope and disaster. Their worlds were still vastly different, but now, in the quiet moments when they could be together, they began to build something fragile but real. A connection that neither of them had ever expected, and yet neither could ignore. Lauren continued his duties as a soldier, but it was no longer the same. Every step he took felt heavier, knowing that at any moment, someone might discover what he and Lyra were planning. He could see the watchful eyes of the royal guards, always in the background, always on the lookout for any signs of trouble. It was a dangerous game they were playing, but Lauren couldn't bring himself to regret it. Not when the alternative, living without Lyra, seemed unbearable. He spent most of his days in training or in the barracks, but each night he would return to the same spot, the Terrace. It had become their meeting place, the only place where they could truly be themselves, away from the prying eyes of the court. Lyra would often join him there, slipping past the guards, her face hidden by a cloak, and they would sit together in silence, watching the stars, talking in hushed tones. It was during one of those quiet nights that Lauren's world was upended once again. He had just finished his evening patrol when he made his way to the terrace, hoping for a brief moment of peace before he was called away again. As he stepped onto the stone balcony, he found Lyra already there, standing by the railing. She was staring out at the garden, her expression distant, as if lost in thought. "Lyra," Lauren called softly, stepping closer. She turned to him, but there was something different in her eyes. The warmth that had always been there now seemed clouded by something deeper, something darker. "What's wrong?" Lauren asked, his voice thick with concern. Lyra didn't immediately answer. She took a deep breath, her gaze flicking toward the horizon. "I've just had a conversation with my father," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "He's insisted that I make a decision about my future." Lauren's heart sank. He knew this was coming. Lyra's father had always been insistent about her marriage, about securing the alliance with the nobleman who had been promised to her. He had never cared for her happiness, only for the power he could gain through such a marriage. "I knew this day would come," Lyra continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "He expects me to choose, to make a final decision." Lauren stepped closer, his hand reaching for hers. "Lyra, you don't have to." "I do," she interrupted, her eyes filled with frustration and fear. "I do have to. My father won't allow me to refuse any longer. He's made it clear that if I don't make a choice, he will choose for me." Lauren's stomach twisted. He knew what that meant. Lyra would be forced to marry the nobleman, and their dreams, their plans would be shattered. He couldn't let that happen. "We have to leave," Lauren said suddenly, the words coming out before he could stop them. "We can run, we can escape and live a life together, somewhere far away where no one can control us." Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. "Lauren, I'm serious," he insisted, stepping even closer, his hand now firmly gripping hers. "We can be free. We can find a way to make it work. I'll do anything to keep you with me." Lyra looked down at their joined hands, her expression conflicted. "I want to believe that," she said quietly. "But it's not that simple. If we leave, my family will hunt us down. My father will stop at nothing to find us. You and I both know what's at stake here." Lauren's grip tightened, but he didn't let go. "I don't care. We'll figure it out. We'll go somewhere where no one can reach us, where no one can tell us what to do." Lyra's eyes searched his face as if trying to find some trace of doubt, some sign that he wasn't completely serious. But there was none. Lauren's determination was clear. He meant every word. But despite the fire in his chest, despite the deep desire to fight for their love, Lyra felt the weight of the consequences pressing down on her. She had never been one to run from her responsibilities, but she had also never been in love like this. Her heart ached with the thought of leaving her family, of abandoning everything she had ever known. But she also knew that if she stayed, she would be giving up something far more important, the chance to choose her own path. "I don't know if I can do this," Lyra whispered, her voice breaking. Lauren reached up, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You don't have to decide right now," he said softly. "But we have to start thinking about it. If we wait any longer, it'll be too late." "You'll be trapped forever." Lyra nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I know," she said, her voice shaky. I need time to think." Lauren kissed her forehead gently, his hand still holding hers. "I'll give you all the time you need, but whatever you decide, I'll be with you." "I promise." For a long moment, they stood there in silence, the weight of their situation settling between them. It felt like the world was closing in on them, like every choice they made would have consequences they couldn't escape. But in that moment, with Lyra's hand in his and the moonlight casting a soft glow over them, Lauren felt a sense of peace. No matter what happened, he would fight for her. He would fight for them. In the days that followed, Lauren and Lyra became even more cautious. They spoke in whispers, avoiding the eyes of the royal guards and the court. Lyra continued her duties, but there was a distance between her and her family. She couldn't bring herself to pretend anymore. She couldn't pretend that she was happy with her fate, that she was content with the life her father had chosen for her. She would often find herself in the palace gardens, walking alone, trying to clear her mind. But it was always the same. The weight of duty, of her family's expectations, pressed down on her shoulders, making it hard to breathe. One afternoon, as Lyra wandered through the garden, lost in her thoughts, she was approached by her father's most trusted advisor, a man named Lord Alastair. He was a tall, imposing figure, his dark eyes sharp and calculating. "Your Highness," Lord Alastair said, bowing slightly. "I trust you are well." Lyra forced a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "I am well, thank you, Lord Alastair." The advisor watched her closely, his gaze calculating. "I trust you have made a decision regarding your future." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. She knew where this conversation was headed. "I am still thinking about it," she said, her voice steady, though her insides churned with anxiety. Lord Alastair nodded slowly. "Your father is growing impatient. He expects an answer soon. The future of the kingdom depends on this alliance, Your Highness." Lyra's stomach turned. "I understand," she said quietly, her voice betraying none of the turmoil she felt inside. "I will make my decision soon." Lord Alastair bowed once more and turned to leave, but then paused. "Remember, Your Highness, you are not just a princess. You are the future of this kingdom. Your choice will shape the future of us all." Lyra stood there, staring after him as he disappeared into the shadows. His words echoed in her mind, and for the first time she realized just how much her life was not her own. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for the entire kingdom. As she turned to walk back to the palace, her heart felt heavier than ever. The decision she faced seemed impossible, and yet she knew that time was running out. She had to choose. And soon, the days grew shorter, and the pressure on Lyra only mounted. Every step she took within the palace seemed to echo with the weight of her responsibility. Lauren's words, the promise he had made to stand by her side, replayed in her mind, but the reality of their situation was becoming more and more difficult to ignore. The nobleman her father had chosen for her, the life she was expected to lead, the kingdom that depended on her, all of it pulled her in one direction while her heart pulled her in another. Lyra spent most of her days locked in meetings with her father's advisors, discussing the future of the kingdom, planning alliances, and securing the marriage that would unite the two powerful families. It was all too much. She could feel the walls closing in on her, but each time she thought about Lauren, about the life they had talked about, the world outside the palace walls seemed to offer some kind of freedom, something that felt real. But even with that dream in her heart, she knew she was running out of time. Her father had been growing more insistent with each passing day, demanding a decision. Lyra knew she couldn't keep pretending that nothing had changed. She couldn't keep going on like this, torn between two worlds, two lives that would never coexist. One afternoon, as she walked through the palace halls, her mind heavy with thoughts of the future, she heard a familiar voice call out to her. "Princess Lyra." She turned quickly and saw Lord Alastair standing at the end of the corridor. His dark eyes were fixed on her, as always, but this time there was something different in his expression, a subtle urgency that made Lyra's stomach twist. She had been avoiding him, trying to escape the pressure he represented. He was the embodiment of everything she was being asked to give up. "Yes, Lord Alastair," she replied, trying to sound composed, even though her heart was racing. "I trust you are well," he said, stepping closer to her. "But I fear that your thoughts are elsewhere. The matter of your future still weighs heavily on you, does it not?" Lyra's breath caught in her throat. He knew, of course he knew. The whole court had been watching her closely, waiting for her to make her choice. "I am thinking about it," she said, her voice faltering slightly, "but I haven't made a decision yet." Lord Alastair studied her for a moment, his gaze calculating. "Your father is growing impatient, Princess. He expects an answer. He is not a patient man, and I believe you know what that means." Lyra clenched her fists at her sides, trying to steady herself. "I understand," she said quietly, "but I'm not ready. I need more time." Lord Alastair's smile was thin, almost cruel. "Time is something we cannot afford. The kingdom is depending on you, Princess. You must make the choice that will secure our future." Lyra felt the walls closing in. The pressure, the expectations, it was all too much. "I know," she whispered, looking away from him, "but I don't want to lose myself in all of this." Lord Alistair took a step closer, his tone softening, though it still carried an edge. "You are not losing yourself, Princess. You are gaining everything. You will gain power, influence, and a future. You will be the queen this kingdom needs, but only if you make the right choice." Lyra met his gaze, her mind spinning with conflicting thoughts. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that this was the only way. But deep inside, she knew the truth. Her heart belonged to Lauren. It wasn't a dream or a fleeting fancy. It was real. And no matter how much she tried to convince herself that duty came first, she couldn't ignore the pull of what they could have together. "I will think about it," she said, her voice firm now, even though her heart felt like it was breaking. "I'll make my decision soon." Lord Alistair nodded, though his eyes held a quiet threat. "You must. Time is running out." As he walked away, Lyra stood frozen, her thoughts swirling. How had she come to this point? How had she gone from being a princess with a clear path to being a woman torn between love and duty? She had spent her whole life preparing for this moment, knowing it would come. But now that it was here, she was no longer sure of what the right choice was. The decision weighed heavily on her, but the truth was clear. If she married the nobleman her father had chosen for her, she would lose Lauren. She would lose the chance to live a life of her own, a life where she could be free to choose her own destiny. And yet, if she ran with Lauren, they would be hunted, forced to live in exile with no support, no safety, no future beyond survival. And what if she chose Lauren? What if they ran away, built a life together somewhere far from the palace where no one could find them? It sounded like a dream, a beautiful, impossible dream. But was it enough to abandon everything else? Was it worth the risk? That night, Lyra found herself on the terrace once again. The stars above seemed distant and cold, the same stars that had once felt like a symbol of hope. But now, they seemed like a reminder of how far away everything she wanted was. She stood there for a long time, her mind racing with possibilities. She heard footsteps behind her, light and familiar. "Lauren." "Lyra," he called softly, his voice hesitant. She turned to him, and for a moment neither of them spoke. The silence between them was thick with unspoken words, heavy with the weight of the decision that had to be made. "I don't know what to do," Lyra finally whispered, her voice breaking. "Everything is falling apart. My father, the kingdom, the future. I don't know if I can choose between them. I don't know if I can walk away from everything I've been raised to believe." Lauren stepped closer, his hand reaching for hers. "You don't have to choose alone," he said softly. "I'm here. I'll always be here." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't look away. She had never allowed herself to cry, never allowed herself to show weakness. But with Lauren, it felt different. It felt safe. "I want to be with you," she said quietly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. "But I don't know how to make it work." Lauren's thumb gently traced the back of her hand. "We'll figure it out," he said, his voice calm and steady. "We'll find a way. No matter what happens, I'll be by your side. We'll make it work." Tears slipped down Lyra's cheeks, but she didn't try to stop them. She had to make a choice, but for the first time, she realized that the choice didn't have to be hers alone. Lauren would be with her no matter the consequences, and that was enough. "I'll choose you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll choose us." Lauren smiled softly, his hand brushing against her cheek. "Then let's go," he said, his voice full of quiet determination. "Let's start over. We don't need anyone's approval. We just need each other." Lyra nodded, her heart swelling with both fear and hope. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be without sacrifice, but she knew now that her future was hers to choose. Together, they could face whatever came next. And for the first time in her life, she felt free.